The role of media in India does not need any introduction. Media shapes the perception of wars for the people, which leads to its influence on government policies. Indian media bridges the gap of information for its audience and the various issues that are discussed on a regular basis. This panel will delve into insights from some prominent media practitioners as well as scholars in the role of media and our understanding of wars. So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming on stage our esteemed panelists Dinakar Peri, Senior Assistant Editor, The Hindu, Prabal Pratap Singh, Group Consulting Editor, Editorial and Content, Network 18, and retired Colonel Danvir Singh. On stage, please. Let's welcome them all with a huge round of applause. This session will be moderated by Mandira Nayar. Mandira Nayar is a journalist with 2 decades of reporting experience. She is currently the Deputy Bureau Chief at The Week. She has worked with The Hindu and The Telegraph and is a Charles Wallace scholar.
Good morning. So I think we're going to be a really short session. We're on a timeline, like all journalists are. And before I start, and I'm hoping that this session is going to give you, while we're going to talk about the larger aspects of the role of the media. I think everybody knows that we kind of shape the scene, but I think we also want to give you a chance to understand what, on the other side of the fence, of what media really feels about reporting about war, about defense, how we cover defense, and so to sort of give you a side of, let's say, our war stories in a way. So it's sort of a different take. And before I start, I just wanted to read a little bit. So there's John Kay, who is a historian, who wrote this book called The Himalayas, and he writes about the Young Husband expedition. And I just wanted to read a little bit about a journalist who was covering it. And he says, it was of course in 1904, and he says the young husband, of course it was an excursion, and I wanted to talk to you about what it was covered by Edmund Candle, who was with the Mail. And he writes, newspaper correspondents are proverbially in a hurry. To send the first wire from Chumbli, I had to leave my kit behind and ride on a ride with a push wheel, which is a long sheep coat, and my sleeping bag tied to my saddle. But the Daily Mail correspondent had said that it was essentially, he was reporting on this. He was reporting the expedition, and he said it's reckoned that it takes 8 days from Darjeeling to Chumbing. But riding all day and mostly all night, I completed the journey by 2. This was because he wanted to send his story off to beat the other correspondent from the Times. So essentially, reporting it is always done on a hurry. And I think I wanted to start off with all of us, because Prabal ji is with television, Dinakar is with possibly the most esteemed paper, the Hindu, and Ranveer ji is with a more nuanced defense thing. So he looks at the larger perspective. And I just wanted to ask you, at a point of time, this whole hurry of sort of reporting news, if you look at it, this was 1907, but it hasn't changed very much, right? We still have to report on conflicts at real time and possibly faster than Twitter or social media. And I wanted to get your take on how you look at covering conflicts at this moment.
Look, when I went to Afghanistan about 2 decades ago, I just had a satellite phone, nothing else. And that was my only means of communication. And today with the digital media and whole lot of things in place, so it's a very, I would put it that way, it poses a challenge to you. And it poses a very serious challenge in the sense, I'm give you a context. When I was in Afghanistan, I was not an embedded journalist by European. You know, most of the CNN, Nick Robertson, all these guys, they were embedded in American. The briefing was happening in Pentagon. I was in Khwaja Bahauddin, a small place controlled by Northern Alliance. And there was no government at all. And I had to report from there. What do I do? The first step I took in Afghanistan was my vehicle's fuel, was not there. So we were taken to a place, and I shot Kalashnikov, 100 Kalashnikovs, and he was a commander. So it is a challenge. But then I realized, but I had heard about, Kabliwala and the stories during my childhood, the Afghans are great guys. So I started, interacting with them. Then I realized that majority of the population was against Taliban. So a narrative has to be, built, and that story has to be shared. So that is how the coverage continued and went on. But it was very difficult. You have nothing, no source of information, no source of information, and you have to be correct. You have to be authentic. You cannot be seen to be, flashing something irrelevant and half-baked story. So it's a very challenging. But I would say at the same time I enjoyed. And bombing started happening a week after I landed in Afghanistan on 5th of October. The Americans were there. Their drones, their bombs they were dropping their bombs. They had not committed ground troops. And the worry of anti-Taliban forces, the Hazara, the Uzbeks, the Tajiks, that they wanted Americans to commit their ground troops because they were not, within quote unquote, so armed to take on this thing. Very interesting thing also. So during course of my coverage, I realized there was this army chief, deputy army chief, Atikullah Bariala Khan, a young guy of Northern Alliance who were fighting Taliban. So I had befriended him during the course of my stay there. So one day I went and asked him that, why it is taking so much of time for the Americans to, eliminate Taliban. So he had intercepted a communication from Pakistani army handlers who were guiding Taliban, to save themselves, to outsmart Americans, to change locations. So I said, share me. So he shared all those conversations with me. That conversation was very important when I flashed that, look, it is not the Taliban. In fact, it is the government of Pakistan, which was fighting war on the behalf of this thing. So, it's an interesting thing. It's a very challenge. It takes, it is difficult at times, but it is very enjoyable. So we enjoy it.
Yeah. But okay, so, I think that the Afghanistan war, of course, changed the way we see it. It was possibly the first foreign war that we had done. I think there was coverage of the Gulf War, but the Afghanistan war after 9/11 was really a turning point. But Dinakar, I wanted to ask you, you haven't maybe looked at a foreign conflict, but what is reporting like at this point of time you work for a print magazine. You work for for print. Yes, I know. But so in a point of time where you've got social media, where you have television, how do you cover conflict, and what are the challenges of covering it?
Thank you. Firstly, thank you for this opportunity to be here. So I'll just give a couple of broad pointers of one, journalism, covering itself in the first place, and then defense reporting, the issues you face. So from 1904 to 2023, what has changed is from days, you are now in minutes. Yeah. So literally, social media drives this thing. So one big challenge is, in a way, social media drives our own coverage. In the sense, it pushes you in a certain direction because something trends. Yeah. Then you say you'll have to pick it up and, trace it, go back. And the second, or rather the more basic issue in that is tackling fake news or dispelling fake news. We spend, for everyone here, you might think, social media, journalists, you social media, you do this. I keep hearing all that sort of stuff. But the point is, probably journalists are, we detest social media the most because it complicates our own lives. Because we spend majority of our time dispelling fake news. Because something goes on, we spend a lot of time just to make sure it's true or not. And especially in defense, then that's where defense reporting comes in. See, something, you hear that something happened, some incident, some terrorist attack happened, something, some crash or some accident, something. It's somewhere in the middle of nowhere. It takes some time for it to win. On the ground, something goes on social media, some picture, it's just half-baked thing. There is no confirmation of that. It can be the entirely different story of what you see, one picture on social media. So, but I can't go by it, any of us here. Because once we put it out, it's taken as credible news. So we have to be double sure. So in a way, that's also a challenge because once we put it out, that's exactly why traditional media, TV, print, magazines, we are relevant because in a way, the traditional media is still the bulwark. It still stops. I mean, all that social media, there's no confirmation, it's anonymity. So media puts it out, there is certain sense of credibility, things calm down. One. Two, that's where the challenge also comes in. So that's where exactly you need better coordination or that bit of one line of confirmation. Many a times, we already know it. When we try to check, say, with the military guys, I can see familiar faces here, we wait for that yes or no. That's it. So that I can put it out and cut out all the fake news or all that misinformation that's going on around. Two, in military reporting per se, again, defense reporting, on a daily basis. I'll give one anecdote. 2016, there was this Pulgaon blast in an ammunition dump in Pulgaon near Nagpur. A major incident. That's actually the incident was because of defective mines, land mines, personal mines, which was supposed to have been discarded, but the procedures, you can't do them. The file, someone said we'll repair it. Someone said, okay, how do you do it? And that file was going around for 3-4 years. So one fine morning, they exploded, in fact, night. So a couple of firefighters, Jawans died. So in the next couple of days, the first thing that went off was when sabotage was not possible because Pulgaon was too far away from the border. So sabotage never came up. But the immediate things were, there was a short circuit, violation of SOP, some grass grew, so caught fire, everything was literally flying. But literally turns out that one defective mine. So entire this thing called discredited. And it was actually very brave on the part of both the then officer who was handling it, the senior hierarchy was handling it, and also the firefighters on the ground. They put their lives to douse those fire. Or because it's a big area, but it could have spread, in other ways. So I'm saying how it takes a bit of a, that thin line of confirmation versus how things just fly off. Again, one example before I finish. 2019 Balakot. Both 26 February 2019 and 27 February 2019. The day of the airstrike, and the next day when things were unfolding over the LOC between India and Pakistan, Abhinandan, etc. Again, social media was on fire, literally on fire. And there was a vacuum. We all, literally as a defense correspondent, we were literally prowling in the corridors, waiting for that one. We knew some things, something for sure, yes, but we also wanted a certain level of authenticity and verification.
Yeah.
What we wait for,
Yeah.
was waiting for that one line.
Yeah.
Because of that, I could not put it out. I told my office, please wait. And once, it took several hours before that came in. And then, anyway, we put it out. Then things died down. Before everything was, all those pictures of one helicopter going down, something else happening. It was just, social media was literally on fire.
Yeah, yeah. No, but I think it's also important to realize how powerful social media is, and I wanted to talk to Colonel Singh after that, is that because you remember the Osama attack, right? It was actually one guy who tweeted, okay, in Abbottabad, and he was the one who he was the one who blew the cover of what happened. So essentially, while social media also puts out fake news, doesn't social media also, in a way, and I wanted to ask you, because you, we were talking earlier and we were talking about what role do we really have, whether journalism is really on, whether journalism is going to survive in the way that it is. And you said that, your magazine doesn't print anymore, you do it, it's online. And I wanted to ask you, how do you see, because in some ways, we are the first responders to the news, right? Whether it is a magazine, whether it's a newspaper, and definitely television. But yours is a more assessed thing, where you have to then actually be the role of shapers for an audience that is consuming it in terms of this thing, but also a different audience. How do you look at the role of the media now to shape any idea of conflict? Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
I will take that. Sorry. Yeah.
A very big question that you asked, that is the fate of journalism
Yeah.
and a role of media with social media coming in. So before I answer this question of yours, let's understand our topic, that is war and media.
Yeah.
So what is war? war is a hostile action that comes to our mind between two states. War is imposed by a nation when it is convinced that all the disadvantages are far too less as compared to the advantages. So war is imposed. There are many forms of wars, like you mentioned in a readout, expedition.
Yeah.
There is expedition, exploration, pacification, intervention, counterinsurgency, rebel, all these things, They're all shades of war. As common citizen, everybody wants to know where their sons are, what are they doing. They want information. And that information is disseminated by the media. And that is where you people come in. So journalism will always stay. It will be in a different form. It may not be in the form the way it is existing today, because there is a lot of desire and quest for information. Now, another aspect to understand in this is, when we talk of war, the centrality is the state. And when we talk of the state which has gone to war, it is looking at justness, because justness mobilizes masses. It creates a national will to fight against the aggression or to carry out aggression in some cases. So that justness has to be established. And justness is established through media. So media would include everything, that is social media, television, print, including Bollywood movies, because they all convey the idea of justness. So as a journalist, whether you are part of whichever media and medium, your role will never diminish. It is an evolving process. You have to evolve. So we all have to evolve. Like you mentioned that my magazine is not printing the print anymore. We are into re-evolving. We have to evolve ourselves to keep ourselves relevant. So that's how I look at it.
But do you think, in the sense that you've said that, of course, there's justness and there is this thing, and I wanted to talk to you about this thing that at some point of time, you've talked about Bollywood movies, and if you look at it, the spate of the movies that we've seen, whether it's Uri or it's in some ways, they also add to the story, which we know to. Which we know, but essentially it sort of humanizes it. It offers you a different perspective. It justifies it. And I think film has definitely been used in the last few years to actually talk about things where journalists couldn't go, where there was information to some extent, where you needed, as Dinakar said, confirmation, where television also couldn't necessarily tell the whole story. And I wanted to ask you, in some ways, there is also, and we were talking earlier, and you talked about the Vietnam War and how actually it was television that changed the course of the war. And could you really just talk a little bit about that, and then I'll get on to my next question.
In fact, before the session started, we were over a cup of coffee, we were discussing this. And whenever there is a technological intervention, whenever new technology comes in, the natural balance is disturbed. And to restore that natural balance, you have to evolve. We saw when the videography started, it was during the World War I. And Americans were very hesitant in signing up and fighting the European war. So to counter that, there were masters there. I think, if I'm not wrong, that guy's name was Keel or something, who was a journalist and who came up with the idea of those news reels which we were talking of. And then, so that was a technology that was used to motivate the country. Thereafter came Vietnam War, and Vietnam War had, in fact, World War II thereafter, where journalists were basically photographers who would write a story and create a video, and they would send back. The complete thing was curated and put across according to the desire of the state, right? When came Vietnam War, the World War II model continued. However, there was one journalist from CBS. he changed the course of the war. He reported, in fact, he did the presentation to camera in front of a village being burned by the GIs. The American soldiers were haloed, they were heroes back home. There was so much of nationalism. But when those visuals hit the mainland America, the perception changed. And it's changed so fast that the American soldiers getting back home were booed. And the veterans started throwing their medals on the road. Impact was that the President of United States and the US military had to bring down the force levels in Vietnam, and eventually they had to withdraw. They lost the war. And the general said that we lost the war because of the generalists. So that is the power of journalism. Whichever way you look at it, it made a difference then, it will make a difference now, and it will always make a difference.
Well, I'm glad. I'm hoping for optimism. Maybe we'll have to move to TikTok, but
And
yeah.
one
Yeah.
changing facet to that. Say, for example, take Afghanistan. I mean, we all have seen it on TVs.
Yeah.
In the modern age. And since then, for us, Kargil was our
Yeah.
Kargil-based war.
Yeah.
From 2000 now to 2023, in 2 decades, we have actually moved to now OSINT, open source intelligence. So literally, you have images, commercial satellite images of all military institutions floating
Yeah.
all over the place. I mean, literally.
Which is
within
where the
hours
Gaza,
and
where the whole,
minutes.
like the Gaza hospital issue.
We have seen
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Exactly. No,
yeah.
all of it. See, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's now Israel. In fact, 2 days
Yeah.
back, the US warship which was entering the Middle East, the Gulf, came under attack. I mean, shot down several missiles which came likely from Iran, Houthi rebels. But the point was, just hours after that, its position was literally tracked on OSINT channels. How it crossed the Suez Canal, which trajectory it took. While looking at the shadow of it, what time was it? Literally everything was there. And that's where you are. I mean, the fog of war, what you saw is over. I mean,
Yeah.
there's one image or this thing is over. I mean, everything is happening. I mean, we saw this in our standoff with China as well.
Yeah.
When there's images are coming out, I mean,
Yeah.
left, right, and center. Every few days. So
Yeah.
that's another thing. It complicates everything for both journalism as well as military planners. I mean,
Yeah,
for nations as well.
completely. Completely. And I just wanted to ask you, where you do television news, where if everybody has access to this and everybody is a citizen journalist, where do you actually have the space to do that? And where does journalism, where do we have space to shape anything when it's being shaped by public perception and social media?
Yeah, to answer your question is that even if there are 100 influencers operating in their own domain, doing stories, but none of the influencer has the capacity and capability to cover it 360 degree. They will have their own take on this. So this gives us an opportunity to showcase or to highlight or to do stories in a 360 degree manner. A. B, it does pose a challenge to us because everybody with access to camera, mobile phone, everything, they can record anything. So we'll have to look beyond stories. We'll have to look for stories beyond story. Then only will you survive.
Yeah.
If today, gone are the days, then I was sharing with you the very interesting information. When 26/11 happened,
Yeah, I was hoping that you would tell that story, yes.
so 26/11 happened, and it's a very interesting, at the same time, it's a very disturbing thing also. Two of my reporters were there near Taj, Commissioner of Police office. They were doing live for some story. Suddenly they saw around 8:20, 30, they saw the police vehicle moving towards Leopold Cafe in Colaba. As the reporters' instinct, one of them rushed towards Leopold and he saw a lot of people, dozens of people in a pool of blood, lying in a pool of blood. The entire Leopold Cafe had been targeted by the terrorists. The other reporter rushed towards Taj Hotel, which was where the terrorists later entered. And when he saw a DCP's vehicle, SP's vehicle, and the SP had probably gone inside the hotel, and his operator was sitting in the vehicle. So as a journalist, he said, दादा बताओ क्या हुआ है क्या यहाँ. तो nobody had any idea. And the entire machinery of Maharashtra police, government of India, nobody had any clue. So बोला यार बेवड़े गोली चला रहे हैं. So बेवड़े गोली चला रहे हैं तो बेवड़े इतने गोली का चला देंगे कि वहां भी चला दी यहाँ भी चला दी. तो उसने कहा दादा तुम एक काम करो, you know, my office will not trust me. Why don't you give me a phone in to my office? So an operator of a DCP saying that बेवड़े गोली चला रहा है will bring some kind of authenticity to the news. So while I was sitting there, two of the terrorists who were literally eliminated by the security forces, they came to the vehicle, appointed AK-47 at the reporter and the operator. And the journalist, my junior, he immediately took out his I card, Patrakar, and they said, "Chhad de yaar," and they walked into the Taj Hotel. That is how he survived. And he called me for 10 minutes. He could not utter a word. I am telling you this story just to understand the kind of situation we work in. So then firing started happening in Chabad House, in Oberai's, in Taj, and a lot of things. We kept on asking, and by the, by seeing the visuals, one can say so it was a terror attack. But the government of India took 5 hours. At 12 in the night, maybe 15 minutes past 12, they said, it is terror attack. What do you expect a journalist? He can't say, बेवड़े गोली चला रहे हैं, because the immediate question will be, अबे कितने बेवड़े हैं, कितनी जगह गोली चला रहे हैं? So what do we do? We can't say it is a terror attack, but because you guys will say, no. When SG is there, it doesn't move. How can you call it terror attack? We are still ascertaining. Look at the challenge we face. Then the interesting part was, and Mumbai police at around 9:30, when their IPS officer was killed by Kasab and gang, they circulated a message: please do not step out of your house, building. What does, as a journalist, what should I report? Tell me. Should I say don't step out? Should I say बेवड़े गोली चला रहे हैं? Or should I trust my own sense that no, this is a terror attack? A beoda can't kill 15 people with this much of blood. 0.32 se marega, 9 mm chalayega at best, but not AKs. So this is, and then the second narrative was built. One channel, media is real time. The commandos, there was no real time. One should understand. Our OBs were parked 20 minutes away. So we will record and go to the OB. It will take half an hour. We were accused of real time. You are exposing our security. It takes you 6 hours to, arrive at the fact that terrorists have entered India. And now you blame us. So it's but it's at the same time, it's very enjoyable. You enjoy it. You keep listening. But my only this thing, this kind of relationship between war and media, either we are looked as a what do you call? Spoilers. Or as auxiliary. No, it's not the case. We are not here to spoil. Yes, something wrong happens, we will report in the larger interest. That will help you understanding a whole lot of things. But I still believe that it's an ongoing,
it's an ongoing battle
takrar between the two. It will continue. We'll enjoy it. We'll keep doing what we want to do. Let the state do what does it want to do.
So, I wanted to ask you, Dinakar, do you really think that in a televised thing with social media, and you've talked about the first aspect of it, countering fake news, right? Do you think that we have the idea of shaping, like for example, Kargil, and that was our first televised war, that changed not only news in television, it changes the way we cover the defense, right? And I wanted to ask you to talk about how, because you remember Kargil, right? You were alive. Yes.
I'm not a journalist,
right.
but yes.
Yes. So just can you talk about that?
Yeah, see, before Kargil, most media houses did not have dedicated defense correspondents, except the top few media houses had, but not all of them.
Yeah.
So in fact, it was after Kargil, almost I think every media, print or TV or even magazine, everyone hired a defense correspondent, a dedicated defense correspondent.
Yeah.
And since then, even the armed forces also then started having proper PROs, their back-end setups of,
Yeah.
like, see, the army has the ADGP, and now the STATCOM setup.
Yeah. For the 4 p.m.
That was
briefing.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, even now, the MOD does not have a proper a briefing daily like the MEA. But the point is, the whole entire setups were created to cater to this, where you could actually go and ask a question or interact. There are also dedicated people in the media houses where, say, the government or the services could reach out and say, okay, something is happening, to issue a statement,
Press release,
release,
yeah.
do
Yeah.
a briefing, whoever.
Yeah.
I mean, you need one person who has a certain amount of understanding and domain knowledge, because
Yeah.
defense is that kind of a setup. You need, again, like MEA.
Yeah.
You need a certain amount of basic understanding, or you can't differentiate between a transport aircraft and a fighter aircraft.
Yes.
As we have
that's
seen too
true.
many times.
Yes, that's true. So this,
As someone
yeah.
asked on TV, a fighter aircraft crashed. Acha, kitne passengers the isme?
But that's true. I mean, I think domain. Yeah, domain.
it's
Yeah,
that,
exactly. Yeah. But I think also another aspect that it is was that it brought war home, right? At that point of time, Kargil in some ways was also a shifting time. And I know all the young kids possibly don't know it. The thing is that, televisions used to be very much a family watching thing. So while 2611 brought terror to your bedrooms because everybody had moved their television into a more intimate space, Kargil brought war to our drawing rooms, right? And it not only changed, of course, for the defense, the way they sort of put out information, but it also changed how we view the forces, right? Because you saw young boys going into war. Some of them didn't come back. Ye dil mange more. I think that defined a generation. And I wanted to ask you, how do you think that changed for someone who was within the establishment, watching the media, and as someone who sort of shapes news himself?
So we're talking about Kargil. Kargil definitely brought the war to our homes. Indian public understood war as seen by the Indians, being fought by the Indians. And they could relate to the stories very well. Otherwise, generally, war reporting traditionally has been associated with the Western press. But here, for the first time in India, the Indians were reporting the Indian war. And that made the public very emotionally connected to the boys. I think the point that I was making earlier, that is the justness part. The Indian media at that time really shaped the things so well. Then justness was brought into our living spaces, and we all, as Indians, galvanized, we mobilized, and it motivated the forces up fighting there. So I think it was absolutely revolutionary when it comes to India, when it comes to war and reporting.
Now, that was quite a power packed session. Thank you, everyone, for an engaging discussion.